Thank you. And that's the truth. I don't have anything else to say. Let's go home and watch football. Before I forget, I want to thank our beloved Patty Haggard. Patty, could you stand for a moment? Who creates these beautiful flower arrangements. These beautiful altars. Thank you. And that's an example of sacred love right there, so thank you so much. Which reminds me that every once in a while we use the term seva, and for those of you who are new, you know, the first time I heard this term, I went, seva what? Save a whale, save a forest, save a, you know. And seva is actually a Hindu term that really is an expression of sacred love as sacred service, as being of service with a conscious mindset. So when we use the term seva, that is what we mean, and we invite you to play in that consciousness, because it's a beautiful consciousness to be in. I've done volunteering for organizations, and I've done sacred service for organizations, and both are wonderful, and there's something deeper with doing that sacred service process. So I invite you to play and be part of that as much as you want to. This year we're working on the idea of living our values in the world. And last month we kind of took a look at some of the values of religious science and what we stand for, looking at the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind textbook. And this month we're looking at the theme of spirituality as diversity and inclusion. To examine that idea, to embrace diversity and to be inclusive. And where that starts is it starts within me. And it starts within me about me. Because if there's a part of me that I can't accept as it is, and I can't be inclusive with, then I can't be inclusive with anybody else out there. So it starts with, and we're going to look at this today, we're going to look at the idea of the spirituality of imperfection. And to be human is to embody paradox. Paradox is this and this simultaneously coexisting. And for most of us who are, especially if we like to be very linear in our thinkings, those kinds of things boggle our minds, right? You know, I love and I hate this person, or a square circle is a great example. Quantum physics is filled with paradoxes, right? And as I was talking with somebody last week where we were doing the Quick Start class, you know, we were discussing, is God this or is God this? And the answer is yes. And more. Because if we're talking about God, we're not talking about God unless we're talking about paradox. So God is always more than whatever we think it is. And it embodies and embraces this and this, whatever this and this are. And so our challenge and our dance as human beings is the fact that we get to be in the midst of that process. We get to have this dance of being human and divine at the same time. A rabbi said everyone must have 2 pockets so that he can reach into one or the other according to his needs. In his right pocket are to be the words, "For my sake, the world was created." In his left pocket, "I am earth and ashes." I am a glorious expression, and for my sake, the whole world was created. And at the same time, also, for my humility and my remembrance, I am earth and ashes. And to remember and to sit in the balance of those two. We do the dance of being spiritual beings, having spiritual experiences in a human form. Isn't it fun? Doesn't it always feel good? Isn't it always joy? I love that reading that we had, that constant idea of constantly happy spirituality. And sometimes we get labeled as that in religious science or in New Thought, right? We're the happy, happy, joy, joy church. I've been accused of that. And I remember a time about 25 years ago when I was walking into a Unity church in the Seattle area, and I was in the midst of really finally uncovering and exploring some of the depths of my pain from my childhood and all the feelings I had stuffed and all that stuff. And I walked into that church that day, and I probably wasn't looking my happiest. Okay? And I had a greeter at the door who had what I call a canned smile on his face. He was greeting everybody, and it was happening. He looked at me and he goes, "Smile, it's a great day." And I looked at him and I said, "Blank you." and it wasn't blank. I've been working for years to get to these things, and I'm not going to let you talk me out of them. And walked on by him, and he was like... And sometimes we have days like that, don't we? We have the days where we need to go deep, where we need to explore the tragedy and the sorrow and the suffering that all of us have experienced. And if we try to shut that side of our life off, we shut off a part of God, and we shut off a part of our true nature. And so today we're going to look at this spirituality that's the balance between these two. That we are simultaneously, we are at once infinite beings living in finite circumstances. We are at once whole, perfect, and complete, and not. We are at once limited and unlimited. Okay? We get to do this dance. We get to play with this. We are not everything, but we are also not nothing. So we are not just worms of the dust, and we are not just everything, but we are this place that explores and plays and works in between. True spirituality lives between these two extremes. This is where we go to experience spirit. This is where we confront our woundedness, and in confronting our woundedness, we experience the divine. Because when I'm stuck in my perfection, aren't I great? I'm not experiencing the divine. I tend to not experience the divine. I was just chatting with somebody a couple days ago that it oftentimes is in our darkest moments, in our darkest hours, we finally really turn and say, God, I'm just willing. Show me the way. Show me the way. There's a beautiful poem that was written in the 1800s by Francis Thompson called The Hound of Heaven. And the Hound of Heaven is God. And Ernest Holmes wrote a wonderful epic poem called The Voice Celestial, and it was a dialogue between what he calls the farer, the wayfarer, the person who is seeking God, and God. Okay? This is a poem between a guy who is running like crazy from God and God. A little different perspective. Okay? He has done everything, and he's admitting it in this poem, everything he can to not have an experience of God. I don't want to. And God finally comes to him late in the poem and says, all of which I took from you, I did take not for your harm, but just that you might seek it in my arms. All which you as a child mistake for fancy's loss, I have stored for you at home. See, we live in a world where the full nature of God is already in full expression. We live in this world, okay, where it's already all here. But we mistake the things, the expressions, for the existence itself. And so sooner or later we have to look past the stuff and past the stuff and past the stuff to see the essence. When Jesus says, why do you call me good? It is not me, but the Father within that does the work. It's the invitation to look past. When the Zen Buddhist says, don't mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon, it's the invitation to look past the outer circumstance and the stuff. And that's our dance, is to look past that. Can I look past that and not mistake the things for the essence? And because of the fact that if you're like me, once in a while you get caught up in this stuff. Got those cookies? We get caught up in this stuff, okay? And so stuff has to fall away. Has to fall away so I can see the real essence of spirit. Ernest Holmes says, spirit is a fluent force. It is forever taking form and forever deserting the form which it has taken. Taking form and deserting the form. The Hindus tell us that everything that arises must fall. Everything that has birth must have death, to be born again. And so what is the truth of this is that we are here to see the essence behind the stuff, the essence behind the things. So right now I'm facing this process in my relationship. Many of you know that my relationship with Cynthia is transforming into something different, okay? And so I get to look at the form, and the form is changing. The form is leaving. The form as it was is leaving. But the essence of love, the infinite love that has always been present, is still there. I remember the other night I was going home and sitting there I was at home actually, and I just remembered I'm still immersed in God's love. Even as Cynthia's and my relationship is changing, I am and she is still right here, right now, immersed in God's love. And it's the awareness of that. One of our congregants who's actually in the room said, to me, what a beautiful flower you both held for a while. What a beautiful flower you both held for a while. And it was. It was a beautiful flower. And yet all flowers must die. All flowers are come into bloom and then go away. But the essence of flowering, the flowering nature behind that, continues on and always seeks more and more expression. And that is what is ours to see, is can I look past the surface? Can I look past the circumstance? Can I look past that thing to see the capital T thing, the thing itself? Can I see the essence itself? Can I move past this one expression and see that the universe always flowers? So perfection is an intellectual construct that you and I make up. Okay? And you know what? We can't agree on what it is, can we? I loved our survey results that we had just in the last few months, and we've got people going, well, the church should be this way. No, it should be this way. And I love this musician when they sing, and I hate this musician when they sing. And I love Reverend David. He's the best thing. I hate Reverend David. He's the worst thing that ever happened to this church. All this stuff comes up. And so it's our idea. We make up what is perfection. We make it up. And if we try and stick with our idea of perfection, we get rigid. We're not flowing with, we're not being flexible. And if you know Spirit, as Ernest Holmes says, Spirit is a fluent force. We have to be flexible. We have to flow with. Okay? So what happens when we're not perfect? Does the world come crashing down? Do we get cast out into the outer darkness where there's the weeping and the wailing and the gnashing of teeth? I love Jesus. Jesus was always going to the scribes and the Pharisees, who were the minders of what's perfect and what's right. This is the right way. And he was always kind of poking it to them, right? He was always yanking their chain. They come in and try and trap him and trick him, and he just, kind of slide out of it and then yank their chain about their attachment to perfection and what it looks like and what it is. And when we get stuck in perfection, that's what happens, is we don't be fluid. We're not fluid, we can't understand, and we can't flow with it. So if we don't do it right, we get stuck. So I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story of a person who is a really excellent pathfinder, or was. That would be me. About 25 years ago, maybe more, no, it was about 35 years ago, I was hiking up Mount Baldy, which is down in Southern California. It's at 10,000 feet in the San Gabriel Mountains. And I went for a hike, and most of the hike is on trail all the way up. And I went with my girlfriend at the time. And she knew, and I knew, that she wasn't in shape to go on that level of a hike. So she was going to just start off with me, brought along a book, and was going to sit by the stream and read while I finished it off. And we were good with that, right? So I go to the top of Mount Baldy. On the way up, I stopped in at, the Sierra Club has a little hut that was part way up, and I kind of poked my head in, and there was a couple that was hosting that weekend that I knew. They were in the Sierra Club camera committee with me. And so got to say hi, chat for a few minutes, and then I continued on up, got to the top of Mount Baldy, and I'm coming back down, and all of a sudden I realized I haven't seen another person for a little while. And the trail to Mount Baldy, although that day it wasn't a highway or freeway trail, there was people on it. And I hadn't seen anybody for a while, and I suddenly realized that I and the path had parted company somewhere. Okay? And we've all had that experience in life, haven't we, where we and the path have parted company. That dang path moved. It was in the wrong place. Why wasn't it where I was? Okay? And so I'm sitting here on the side of this mountain, about probably the 8,000 foot level, so the air's a little thin. I've already been up to the top and back, getting a little, tired. And I'm trying to find the path. So I'm trying to backtrack, where I might have gone off, and that doesn't take me anywhere that I can find. And, so, and I do this kind of up and down this fairly steep escarpment for quite a while, trying to figure my way back out of the path. Can't find the path. So finally I noticed that down below me is a creek. And I know there's a creek that runs right by the hut in the Sierra Club hut. So I figure, okay, I'll track down that creek, and I can make my way down the creek and find my way to the hut. I've been doing this for a little while, and I suddenly realized I'm following the wrong creek in the wrong canyon from where I want to be. So now I'm really off my path, up a creek, yes, or down the creek, and I have to go back up the creek. Okay? And so I'm doing this process, And eventually, after about 2 hours, I finally see a couple of people walking up on just above me. I go, oh, thank God, there's the path. I have never been so happy to see a trail in my life. Right? Okay? And so then I'm finally coming down this trail, and by now it's kind of getting a little bit heading towards dusk. And I'm thinking, oh my God, my poor girlfriend's got to be worried sick down there by the stream, which is, God, I left her a long ways back. And so I come around this corner, and as I come around this corner on the trail, you can see the hut over on the other side, but you still have to kind of do this V back into the canyon that's there, the ravine that's there, to get there, so it's not going to be half mile. And there she is coming up the trail at me. And I have never been so happy to see a girlfriend in my life, and so impressed with the fact that she, who was not in shape, had gotten all the way up to that level. And she came running up to see me, and she was very happy to see me because, we all knew that the people in the hut knew that I was lost. They were starting to get a search committee, or a search group together to go find me, okay? Because they knew that I should have been back by then. And so we finally made it down to the hut, and and we're still quite a ways from the car. And they said, the couple at the hut said, "Why don't you just stay here overnight? We got extra sleep bags, we got extra food. You're good." And it was a Saturday, and so we had nothing planned on Sunday. We didn't need to do anything. We knew that her sister, who she lived with, would be worried sick. But this is the days before cell phones. There was no way to contact her, and we just said, "Yeah, we're going to stay." And they said, "Oh, by the way, we've got a group who's coming in the morning who's hiking up. It's a chamber orchestra, and they're going to do a little 5-member chamber orchestra concert in the meadow out here. Why don't you stay for that?" And so we did. And we had this beautiful, magical weekend of music and companionship and looking at the stars at night on up there. And living in LA, you don't see the stars at night too clearly when you're down in the city. And so we had this magical weekend that we would have never had I done it right. If I had been a really good path follower, it would have never happened. And this is how Spirit works. Because we have an idea. There's that old saying, make God laugh, tell her your plans. Okay? And so my plans were to go up, come down, be back at home, and that. God had a different plan, and it was a much better plan. Now, none of that joy would have happened had I not followed the path. Ernest Kurtz says, the spirituality of imperfection begins with the recognition that trying to be perfect is the most tragic human mistake. Trying to be perfect is the most tragic human mistake. Breathe that in for a moment. Breathe that in. See, the universe constantly invites us to look past our idea of perfection and see its idea of perfection. What is Spirit's, what is this infinite presence's highest idea of perfection? Okay? And it's not always easy to see up front. Let me point out the fact that even though I was a good Zen Buddhist at the time, I was not sitting there as I'm running up and down this slope and trying to figure out where the heck I am and where the heck the trail is. I knew where I was, I just didn't know where the trail was. I was not experiencing that as divine perfection. By a long shot. Okay? But in the end, looking backwards, afterwards, I could see the beauty of what happened. It's only when I looked back that I could see this perfection. And so are we willing to look past our own ideas? Are we willing to look past what we think is perfection and say, you know what, I'm willing to open up and experience what is Spirit's idea of perfection, and it may not be the same as what I think it is now. Spirit might have a bigger and better idea. So this week, I want to invite us to do 3 spiritual practices. And the first one is to become aware of where you hold tightly to the idea of perfection. Where do I hold that it must be this way? My spouse must be this way. My work must be this way. My money must be this way. The president must be this way. Breathe. The world must be this way. Whatever it is, where do I hold this idea tightly? And can I start to loosen? Can I start to loosen? I must be this way. I have to be perfect. Where can I let that go and loosen? If we don't loosen, if we don't let go, we can be like the scholar who invites the Zen master in for dinner because he wants to learn about Zen and spends the entirety of dinner telling the Zen master all that he knows. And the Zen master at the end of dinner begins to pour a cup of tea for him. And when the teacup gets full, he continues to pour. And and the cup runs over down to the table and then runs over down off the table onto the floor, and the scholar is going, stop, stop, the cup is full and overflowing. He says, yes, and it's just like your mind. There's no opening for anything new to come in. When I'm still attached to my idea of perfection, my idea of how it should be, there's no room for Spirit to put something new in. So can we let go of our idea of perfection? Can we become aware of where I'm holding tightly on to that idea and start to release it? So that's the first practice. The second one is to look for the paradox, the space that's between the right and wrong, that involves and includes both. Whenever I'm stuck in this is right and this is wrong, or it must be this way or it must be that way, or it's either going to be this or it's going to be that, I know I'm in human limited thinking instead of listening to Spirit, which includes all of that, which says, yes, it can be this way, and it can be this way, and it's more. Whatever our idea of God is more than that, and it's too limited. And so that's the truth of our lives. Because this is where Spirit lives. Spirit lives in that paradox. Spirit lives in that paradox. And Spirit is always bigger than our idea. The other day I was a couple days ago, I was sitting in the Chinese restaurant, and I got this wonderful fortune. I want to read it to you because it's really, it's about wisdom. The wise thing to do is prepare for the unexpected. How do I prepare for the unexpected? I can prepare for the expected, but how can I prepare for the unexpected? Isn't that a wonderful koan? Isn't that a wonderful paradoxical statement? Prepare for the unexpected. So take a look at where we're doing that and let go and trust Spirit to be moving through us. So that's the second one, is look for the paradox, the space in between, and allow ourselves to listen to Spirit in that paradox. And then the final thing that I'm going to invite you to do is to play the holy fool. There was a man once who went to his rabbi, got a lot of rabbi stories today, who went to his rabbi and he said, Rabbi, I'm a fool. He said, but I know I'm a fool and I'm okay with being the fool. And the rabbi says, so why do you think you're a fool? And the man says, because everybody tells me I'm a fool. And the rabbi says, you're only a fool because you're listening to everybody who else tell you that you're a fool. You're wise if you know who you are. If you know you're a fool, you're wise. But if you're only thinking that because you're listening to everybody else, then you are truly a fool. Play the fool this week. Be willing to be silly. Be willing to be crazy. Be willing to go somewhere you're not supposed to go. And do something you're not supposed to do. I'm off camera right now, aren't I? Yep. In the first service, where is he? Michael Wopat had just walked in, and I said, you know, Michael's a wonderful bass player, but the first time he played bass, it was terrible. Now, I wasn't there, I don't know that, but I do know that, right? There's a wonderful saying that says, anything worth doing is worth doing badly, which goes against our perfection consciousness, right? Anything worth doing is worth doing badly because we have to do something badly to start with. Our wonderful, I love Mary's introduction of Cherie, our wonderful fresh practitioner, at one point in time, did treatments really badly. Today she does them beautifully. My first talk, not as a minister, but when I belonged to the Sierra Club's camera committee, I had to get up and make an announcement one time about an event that was coming up, and I had to say it 3 times because the first 2 times I was running through it so fast because I was so nervous, and this is talking to about a dozen of my friends, and still making this announcement, and they couldn't understand a word I was saying. That was my first talk. Okay? We all do things badly first. Am I willing to be wrong? And boy, be willing this week to be wrong. Take a breath. Only when we're willing to be wrong can we come into a greater understanding of that, what I call the capital R, the deeper, the spiritual idea of rightness. And all spiritual teachers, Jesus used to say, follow the kingdom in its righteousness. And it's not about self-righteousness, it's about the way that the kingdom works. We spent all last month looking at how does spirit work? How does it work? Rather than how do I want it to work and think it should work. Can I be willing to be let go and be wrong? I want to close with a quote from, so would you play with me with this week? In that kind of spiritual practice? We're going to look at where it is that I'm clinging to perfection. We're going to look at the paradox and see if we can see the spirit in the middle of it. And we're going to be willing to play the holy fool. Okay? We're good with that. By the way, the book that we're working with is The Spirituality of Imperfection by Ernest Kurtz and Catherine Ketchum. I highly recommend it. It's a great book. It's available on Amazon. We'll also be working with the book Blink, which is by Gadwell, I believe it is. So I was originally going to close with a quote by Rumi, which I am going to close with, but this morning Richard Rohr's meditation came through, and it was perfect for what we're talking about today, so I'm going to actually close with him too. I hope you don't mind a double close. I might do it wrong. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make sense. I invite you to play in that field this week. To go past our ideas of right doing and wrongdoing. I mentioned in the first service that as I was walking out the door this morning, Cynthia had just turned on the TV, and while she was searching the channels, the Face the Nation program was on. They were interviewing a member of the administration. I'll just leave it that way. Not to name names, and it's not about that person. But that person said something to the effect of, well, I know the American ideals are better than everybody else's ideals. Okay? And I thought, first of all, you need to go read that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And secondly, I thought, each country has ideals and ways of being that are perfect for that country. Okay? And we can love our American ideals. They're wonderful. Are they better than everybody else's? No. They might be better for us, but are they better across the board? Can we kind of come down from our self-righteousness, from our conceit as people? And we all do this individually, by the way. This isn't just about that person. That person just mimics and echoes what we all do. My way is the best way. Can we step back off of that way and start to say, I'm open to seeing other ways? Because Spirit has an infinite number of ways. There's an old Zen saying that says there's one lake and many streams. One lake, many streams. I want to close with a quote from Richard Rohr, who says, the gift of contemplative prayer is not a way of thinking or speaking. It's much more a way of not thinking and not speaking. It is more about naked presence. It finally moves beyond words into silence, into awareness of the mystery that is too deep for words. Our awareness of God's presence is outside of and beyond our power to express in any words or conceive in any thought. This reminded me of the Taoist story that there's a saying in the Tao Te Ching that says, he who speaks does not know, and he who knows does not speak. And it's a conundrum, by the way, for every minister on every Sunday. Because if I'm speaking, I must be implying that I don't know based on that. But on the other hand, I don't want to stand here for 20 minutes and go, there's a few people who would be happier with that, but... And so there's a group of students who are asking a Taoist master, they said, what does Lao Tzu mean by that? And he says, how many of you have experienced the essence of the smell of a rose? And they all said, yes. And he says, put it into words. And they're all silent. The idea of Spirit is beyond our words. While our prayer of words is an attempt to express to ourselves our relationship with the great mystery, the prayer of silence is not so much to express, but to experience that mutuality. We acknowledge and rejoice that we are the beloved. We sit and wait until we know this truth in our body and in our memory. Silence leads to resting in the beloved's arms, reveling in the quiet that follows making love. There is simply an awareness that it is very good, as it says in our creation story. So let us move into prayer, and this time I'm going to simply do the first 2 steps of prayer. And I do this once in a while for myself, personally. When I'm not really attached to or trying to manifest anything, I'm just remembering Spirit and myself. So take a breath and join me as I know God is, and I am that. God is, and I am that. Om is, and I am that. Ba'ula is, and I am that. Ahura Mazda is, and I am that. Allah is, and I am that. Buddha mind is, and I am that. Brahma is, and I am that. Tao is, and I am that. And so it is.